Hello, I'm Rick Stivers, and I'd like to welcome you today to Young Martin's Reels. The reel we're going to work on today belongs to a friend of mine. He inherited it from his father. This reel has been sitting in a box since 1971, and I get the honor of going through this reel, cleaning it up, servicing it. It's actually in pretty good shape. The grease inside it has kind of dried up a bit, so what happens as you wind it, every now and then right there, see, it's a little hiccup and it'll stick, and then it'll go on again, and then it'll stick again. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it apart. We're going to clean the rust off of it. It's got a little bit on the handle itself and a little bit on some of these posts here, and I believe most of that will clean up okay. So we're going to clean that up and see if we can't get this up and going. I don't know that it's ever going to do anything except go back into the box that it was in. But it's a rather unique reel. I've never seen another one like it. It's got this post right here. And what this post does is as you wind it, this post slowly rotates little bit by little bit. And what that does is that creates the level wind. So there's always going to be a low spot on here. And as you're rolling it around, it'll keep moving that low spot until it gets down to one end. And once it gets to that end, then it's going to start and it's going to come back down the other direction. And that's what your line is going to ride on. And that gives you your level wind feature. And it's pretty unique. Most of them have a worm gear, and this one doesn't. So we're going to start off by taking this assembly out. Or I'm going to try to anyway. It's in there pretty well. Tell you what, let's do. I don't want to mar this chrome, so let's put a rag over it. There we go. There we go. I think that's loosened it enough to be able, yeah, now we can do it by hand. Okay, we're going to lube that up better when it goes back on, so that hopefully it'll go on and off easier. All right, with that done, we should be able to lift this out. Okay, that takes that part off. And I was thinking about taking these off for ease of use, but I think we're going to leave it on there. They're tight. I'm going to leave it there. We can clean up around it once we pull the spool off. So the next thing we're going to want to do is remove the handle. Okay, so we do that by removing this screw. Move it over. And then because this is a Penn reel, it's got these unique Penn screws on it. And this is by far the biggest Penn reel that I've worked on so far. There are much larger. But if you notice, I'm only on to this size screw. So by the time you get up there, you're talking some big, big Senator reels. And I'm not working on a reel that size. So get that. Okay, that's got the handle off. Once we've done that, we should be able, before we do that, let's tighten this back down a little bit and see if we can't get a feel for our drag washers in this reel. All right, with it tightened down, if you look right inside here, see this gap? Let's bring it up closer and bring in the focus. All right. See this gap right here? If this gap were closed up, that would mean that your drag washers were pretty well worn out. These drag washers are not even close to worn out because we have a rather large gap right there. So I think we're going to be in good shape when we get in there. So let's go ahead, take this drag knob off again. It's a star adjuster. Okay, we've got that off, and we can take this sleeve off, and maybe, nope, those other ones aren't going to want to come out yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these screws around the outside edge. Now what we're probably going to find is that this screw and this screw are going to be shorter than all these post screws. Okay, these post screws are almost always longer than the seat screws. So let's take a look at that. All right, there's our first 2 post screws. Now we're moving on to our next seat screw. Now, this one is the same size, so that's a bit of a surprise, unless somebody's been in here before. All right, now this one's shorter. And I think what we're going to find is one of these screws over here, somebody has had out before, and they put the shorter screw up there where it doesn't belong. Longer screws, so maybe this is our short one. And that's what we've got. Okay, a shorter screw up there. Okay, now, something I've just noticed. Oh, we've got a broken screw on this post. So I've got to see if I can get that out of there and see what we can do about that. All right. Hadn't noticed that before, but there we have a broken screw. Let's see. I'm going to try to grab hold of that and see if we can unscrew it out of there. There we go. I got one turn out of it. All right. There we go. Full turn out. So we've got a broken screw for this post, and we're going to have to replace that. I'm going to pause right here and see if we have that screw. Okay, I'm back. I was able to find a replacement for the broken screw. Where I got it from was I've got this Penn 209, and I've got 2 that I'm going to build into one reel. So, therefore I've got a few extra screws in it. So we're going to set that off to the side, but we do have this extra screw that we're going to need for that post. And let's go ahead and pull this off and set the spool over to the side. And now we can go ahead, if we want, and reinstall this post on the other side. There we go. All right, and that's going to have that side functional again. So first thing we're going to do now that we've got the spool out and the side cover off, is we're going to try to clean this up a little bit in here. And your cotton swab normally is not going to fit down inside that bushing all the way. So what I do is I'll take and pull part of the cotton swab off, get that over off of the table and out of the way, and then I can take that and insert it down inside the bushing to clean it. And it gets a little bit of grease there, that's fine. And what we're going to do is I'm going to spray just a little bit of WD-40 into that hole. Let that sit for a few seconds. And then go back inside and scrub it one more time. Okay. So far, this reel looks really good inside. I'm going to oil. Turn it this way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put a few drops of oil, fishing reel oil, into that bushing. And we'll put a little bit here and a little bit under this switch, and then we'll exercise the switch and make sure that it's functional. Okay, now this is all functional at this point. Everything over here on this side is working. What I'm going to do now is take a little bit of steel wool and a little bit of WD-40 and spray it on these posts and see if we can't clean up this little bit of corrosion that's on them. It may clean it up, it may not. And once that salt water has penetrated the chrome, there's really not a whole lot you're going to be able to do for it. All right, and that's about as good as that chrome's going to get. Go ahead and wipe the excess oil off. There we go. And we'll set that one over to the side for later. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the spool. We're going to wipe off the ends of the spool. Make sure that they're clean, and they are. Then we're going to take and put a little bit of grease on each side. Now, if you want this clicker right here to be very loud, don't put any grease on this cog right here. If you wish for it to quiet down just a little bit on the clicker, go ahead and grease it. That grease acts as a little bit of a cushion, not a lot, but a little bit of a cushion, and will quiet that cog down just a little bit. All right, that's clean. It's ready to go back in. This side is good. That's going to bring us over to this assembly. And this assembly looks beautiful, but there's practically no grease in it whatsoever. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop off this beauty ring right here, like that. And now let's take a look at what we have here. This is the gear set that moves this piece. Okay, the first thing I want to tell you is to be very, very careful with this spring right here and right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove those springs. Now, I like to use an ice pick for doing that because I can get inside the spring, kind of work my way in a little bit, and then I can lift the spring out without doing it any damage. Okay, so there's one of the springs right there. You can also use a safety pin, anything else that can get in there. But whatever you do, don't let those springs take off flying. All right, we've got those two out. All right, at that point, we can take this gear out. Or at least I think we can. Let's go ahead and take out this cog over here. Got that one out. This one can't come out because it's screwed in right here. But we are going to take it out. So what you're going to do is you'll unscrew it. With the screw removed, you can now lift out this cam lever. And you can remove this gear. Okay, we're going to set these two over on this side, along with the screw. Now notice that this is all coming out with no grease on it. So it made for a very clean reel, but it doesn't help it function all that well. Let's get these two broken pieces over here out of the way. All right, we've got those pieces removed now, so we don't have to worry about springs taking off and flying through the air. I'm going to flip this over. And we will remove these four screws. Now I'm going to keep them cupped in my hand in the event that there's a spring under here that's going to go flying. We don't want that to happen. Okay, notice this screw has got no threads over most of the length of it. That's going to be going into a spring on this side. So we're going to set it over here. And this one over here should be exactly like that also. There you go. Now these two should be all threaded through the entire length of the screw. Like that. Okay. And then we've got this last one over here, which I believe is going to be holding the anti-reverse dog, but I'm not positive of that because I've never had one of these 350s apart. Okay, we're going to leave that screw in place for the moment and let this slide out. And let's see what we get. All right, there we go. There, now that screw falls out, the one I couldn't get out. We're going to set this over to the side, like so. And we're going to be able to lift this gear. Now, watch this spring right here. That's the one we're after. Okay, that's your anti-reverse dog spring. Then we've got this pinion gear. And we have the main gear. And there's our anti-reverse dog. And this is in really good shape. As clean as this is, I don't really think we're going to need to pull this pin out. However, if I wanted to pull this pin out to get into here, to get any grease and grime out of here, this is just so clean and smooth that I don't think it's necessary. But there's a pin right here. And what you would do is you would take something like an ice pick or an awl or something and push that all the way through, and it will push the pin out the other side. You may have to tap it with a hammer or a mallet, but that's all you need to do. This one is in such good shape, we're not going to take it off of there. What we're going to do instead is we're going to add a few drops of oil down inside it. Spin it around a little bit. All right. That's got that. Now there should be a hard washer on the bottom, and there is. This hard washer fits right here. Okay, now we're going to take apart this gear and the drag system. We've got one drag washer left in. It didn't come out with the batch. And I don't want to tear it up, so let me get a smaller screwdriver. Okay, here we go. There we go. Very gently unstick that washer off of there. All right, these washers are very dry. They've been sitting, like I said, since 1971. And they have stuck to the washers, to the metal washers. And we've got to clean that up and re-lubricate these washers. They're leather. All right, and the way that they go together, let me wipe them off real quick first, and we'll just go ahead and put it right back together. And this is a typical Penn drag setup, so there's nothing surprising in here. Everything works as advertised. All right, now, first, before we go putting anything back in here, we got to inspect this. There's a lot of dried up grease inside this, so we're going to clean that out real quick. Give me just a moment, and I'm going to pause and come right back. All right, I'm back. The gear has been inspected. It's been cleaned. All the teeth look really nice in it. I haven't cleaned up this one yet. Let me go ahead and clean it up real quick. All right. Okay, I'm sure that those little chunks of dried up grease in there was what was causing this to stick and hiccup. All right, we're going to put the main gear on. Let's go ahead and grease it up, because I am notorious on these for forgetting to grease this gear and having to come back and kind of slide it in the side. So we're going to go ahead and put it on now before I forget. All right, now we'll slide it on. And now we've got our drag washers. And our drag washers are going to have to be lubricated as well. What we're going to do, I'm dipping them into Cal's drag washer grease, universal fishing reel and drag washer grease, lubing them up and rubbing it in, and then sliding them on. All right, first goes the leather washer. Next comes an all metal washer with this oval in the middle. We're going to slide that on next. That's called a keyed washer. Next, we're going to lubricate another one of our leather drag washers. Wow, that was really dry. It sucked that grease right up. There we go. Much better. Okay, we're going to slide that one on. And next we'll go what is called the eared washer. It's got these little tabs on it. They look like little ears sticking out, and they're going to go into slots inside this gear. And you got to find the slots for them to go into. There we go. Now it drops down in there. And that gives us one more leather washer to lubricate. We'll lubricate that and install it like so. And we're going to put on the last keyed washer, which also has this oblong hole in the middle. That all slides back together. We're going to take a little bit of fishing reel grease and put it around this collar right here. And the reason we're going to do that is because we're going to slide this piece on. This is a tension washer. It's got a shape to it. We're going to slide the tension washer on, and then we're going to slide this collar back on. With those two on there and the grease on there, that's going to keep that from sliding off like that, okay? So I'll set that over to the side, and that brings us over here to the jack plate and yoke and the eccentric. So we're going to slide this down, and we're going to lift up on this jack plate and lift it out of there. There we go. Then we're going to gently lift up on the yoke, allowing it to come up because it's spring loaded. It's got two springs under here. All right. We're going to clean this yoke assembly, which it's really clean to begin with. And then we're going to lubricate it in the middle, just a little bit. And we're going to put just a dab over here on these outside edges because this jack plate's going to hit right there. Okay. With that done, we now need to do this pinion gear. We're going to lubricate the pinion gear. Now, the pinion gear's got this cutout right here. See this cutout? That cutout is intended to fit onto the spool like that. Okay? So we need to make sure that this goes into this side cover with that facing towards the spool. So slide it into the yoke and set the yoke down into place. Well, let's tell you what, let's leave that off for just a moment. Leave those two springs in place because, well, let's take them out just so we don't lose them. There we go. Okay, we got the two springs off. What we want to do is we want to lubricate this eccentric right here. Now, this eccentric is made to be oiled. Okay, we're going to push in on a little oil here, and we're going to give it some oil. There's a hole inside this eccentric that allows that oil to pass from inside the eccentric to the outside edge of it inside here so that it is lubricated inside that side place. If you don't keep that well lubricated, what's going to happen is it's going to wear out that hole, and then it's going to kick over sideways and it's not going to fit properly anymore. So we've got that done. We're going to add a little bit of grease onto the face of the eccentric because the jack plate's going to ride there. This is a jack plate. Now, we're going to come back and put these two springs back in. One here and one here. Next comes the yoke. We're going to sit it in here on top of those two springs. And then we're going to take our finger and just gently push down on it. Like so, to hold those springs in place. Then we're going to take our lubricated jack plate, slide it into place. Hang on. We want it in this upper position. So that lever is going to be over there. And take this, slide it in like so. That puts everything where it's supposed to be. All right, now all that is held in place by the jack plate. Now, don't be banging it around because if that jack plate pops off, the springs are going to fly. You don't want that. Now it's time to put this assembly back in. Slide it in like so. It's already been lubricated. Okay, push down on your jack plate and your pinion gear and rotate this over the top of it like so. All right. Once you get it over to right about here, we're going to want to take one of our 4 screws, one that's got all threads on it, slide it up through there, and now comes, oh, that's not the right one, our anti-reverse pawl. And notice that the anti-reverse pawl and that worm gear pawl look a little bit similar. Don't get them confused like I just did. All right, slip it in. Once it's in place, it's going to leave a small cavity right here. And what's going to go in that small cavity is that small spring that you took out. See that little guy? He's going to go right there. You're going to slide it in place, and you want to hold him in place. Don't do like I just did there and try to push it in with your fingernail, because if it pops off your fingernail, it's going to go flying. Okay? So you want to slip that in there. You want to hold it in place while you get it to squeeze down into that spot. And it can go flying. A lot of people will take this and set the whole assembly into a Ziploc bag for this action so that spring can't go. Okay, now see the spring? Let's see if we can focus on it. See the spring is in that notch right there? That's how you want it to be. Hold your finger over it while you rotate this around. Once you get it to there, you should be able to screw the screw back in. Don't screw it in all the way, just screw it in enough to hold everything in place. With that done, now come back directly across and put in your partially threaded screw. Make sure it lines up with its hole, which currently it's not. There we go. Screw it in a little bit, not all the way down. Go to the other one that's partially threaded. Put it at the other side. These are called your bridge screws. Okay, and now comes your final one over here. You got to make sure everything lines up. That's why you didn't want to tighten them down all the way until you got everything lined up. And I think this one may be just a little bit too tight. All right, now let's try to get it to line up. Still doesn't want to. Okay. There, I just felt it click in the hole. Okay. Once you get all 4 started in the holes straight, you can tighten them down. All right. There you go. That's got everything there greased and oiled. Here your anti-reverse working. All right, now we've got to put this assembly back in on the side. Remember that this went in just like this, in this configuration. We're going to take this gear, inspect it, make sure everything looks good on it, and it does. And we will grease the teeth on this gear. Slip it back down inside and make sure that it meshes up to the other gear. Put this cog back in, like so. And we're going to put this screw back in. Okay, that should move freely, and it does. Okay, before we put that in the rest of the way, we're going to try to take this gear, inspect it, and this one takes kind of a lot of wear. So let's go ahead and put some grease on it too, although it had none on it when we started. It's an aluminum gear, and those little cogs are going to ride on it, and you can see a bit of wear on the gear itself. So let's set that gear back inside like that. Okay, it's ready to go. Now, before we go trying to put this spring in, let's go ahead and set this last cog in. All right, it goes right there. And now we're ready to put these two springs in. All right, this one here. Notice the little piece on the end here. That's going to fit over the end of the spring. Hold it in place. Slide the spring over and get it to fall into place like so. Now, I'm going to recommend that you not turn any of this, because that little bit of turn, and the popping of that can cause those springs to pop out of there. So I'm going to recommend that you don't do that. There we go. All right, that's got that one in place. So those are ready to ride. Now, you don't want to test it until you put this trim ring back on. And that'll hold all those gears in place, or all those springs in place. So we're going to line those up, slide this down on there. All right, then we can come back and start turning this. And I don't think it's going to turn anything yet, because we don't have this star wheel tightened down yet. That's for our drags. And our drags have got nice, freshly lubricated parts in there now. So they're going to slide on each other real easy until we turn this down a little bit. Snug it down. Okay. Now everything's turning. And if you watch, everything is turning in here. See, this is the final on the gear. And watch, it moves one little bit at a time. All right. So that's got that done. The only thing I haven't accomplished yet is I haven't cleaned up this handle. And I'm thinking that I'm going to soak that in a little toilet bowl cleaner to see if I can, because it's really thick and encrusted on there. I want to try to get all that off. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and put the rest of this back together. All right. Our cog goes in on this side over here. Slide it back in like so. Okay. Now we want to try to line all these up. Now we got the big open space up top from here. So that's going to be from here to here. So that's going to be across the top. So we can set that in place and line things up. And then try to get these screws lined up. Okay. Now something's not going together quite right yet. There it goes. It just dropped down. All right. With that in place, now we have 2 short screws here and 4 long ones. As I told you, somebody had one of them in the wrong, 2 of them actually in the wrong place. They had short ones where long ones went and long ones where short ones went. And this is not properly lined up with the plate on it yet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move this over just a little bit and see if I can adjust that. There we go. Now they're lined up properly. So bring it over, line it up to the hole. Okay, let's go 180 out to the other side. Put in 2 more long screws. And that leaves us our 2 short screws to go in the reel seat. Okay, before you tighten them down too much, make sure you got good free play. And we do. And then tighten them down some more. All right, that's got that installed to that point. Now we're going to come back and install our level wind feature. Like so. And once it's installed, we can come back here. We're going to put a little grease on these threads because they sure felt awful tight when we were tightening it down before, or loosening it. Okay, so set it back into place. Okay, you want to tighten this down until you just have just the slightest amount of play right there. Okay, once you've done that, I did have this on, but it unscrewed itself. Okay. Okay, all that's spinning around real nice. Watch our level wind feature making its rotation. Very unique, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to pause for just a second. Well, for you, it'll be just a second. For me, it's going to be probably about a half hour, 45 minutes. I'm going to go soak this in some toilet bowl cleaner and see if I can get this heavy pitting off without having to take in sand or grind on it any. I don't want to mess up the rest of the chrome that's on there, and I don't think the toilet bowl cleaner will affect any of that. I think it will just take off what's corroded. Okay, I'm back with this handle now, and while it's not perfect, it does look much better. I put it in some toilet bowl cleaner for about 30 minutes to soak, and it took most of the corrosion off, but as you can see, the chrome is still pitted. That's not going to change. Once it's pitted, but at least I didn't remove any other chrome getting down to it. So it looks a lot better than it did. So that's got that cleaned up. All right, we're going to put this back on. Along with its screw. Okay. And you got to be careful when you tighten this that you don't over tighten it, but you want to tighten it to the point where the screw is ready to be lined up. All right. Let's get it back together. All right. Now let's take a listen to our clicker. All right. Let's All right, let's take the clicker off. And yes, it spools out nicely. Very nicely, as a matter of fact. I'll pull some of this off and use the level wind feature now to straighten it out. Well, we will if we get it on top of the level wind feature. Okay, I'm going to bring it around here to add just a little bit of tension to it and see what we've got. All right, all working good. Let's test our drag. Drag's good. Now, when you're going to be storing this, go ahead and loosen the drag so it doesn't press all the grease out of it. Spool release operates fine. Re-engages. It's all nice and smooth now. So, Mr. Pete, I have finished up your daddy's reel, and I'll be returning it to you. I'm also, one of the interesting things that came along with this reel was a catalog of things that were available from Penn in 1973. And I'm going to go ahead and scan a copy of all of that so that I've got it and I'll post it out there. But there you have the Penn 350 level wind reel. It's been serviced, lubricated. It's a very nice reel. I would be proud to own it myself. I don't know that I'd ever have. I'm kind of like Pete. It's been for him, it's been sitting since 1973 because he really doesn't have a use for it. He doesn't go out doing deep water fishing. It's a big, heavy reel, and he feels that it's unnecessary. So he put it away. And when he does ever go out on charter boats all provide the reels, rods and reels for those. So, Pete, it's done. We can put it back in the box. Maybe it'll go back until 1973 again for another 50 years. That's done. If you like what you saw here today, please hit the like button. If you didn't like it, that's okay. Let me also point out, there's a few places here that there are points for you to lubricate. Okay, there's one there. We did this one here. There's one here, and there's one here. And this, there you go. And that allows you to lubricate all those points and pretty much everything in here without taking this apart. There's two more on the other side. And there you have it. If you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like notifications as to when I'm sending them out, hit the notification button. And there you have it. The Penn 350 with Young Martin's Reels, and signing out.